Hare Krishna, welcome back to our Bhakti Yoga Journey series. So today we are resuming with second canto, chapter number 9, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version. So today, very powerful chapter. In fact, this is, if you remember in our last class, we discussed how Parikshit Maharaj asked some very pertinent questions. And two very important questions that he had asked are going to be addressed in this chapter. And the Atma Tattva, the concept of Atma means the self, Atma also means the Supreme Lord. So the knowledge of the self and the Lord is going to be revealed in this chapter. That's why it's a very special chapter. If you remember in the previous chapter, chapter 8, text number 7, Parikshit Maharaj asks an interesting question. He says, O learned Brahmana, the transcendental spirit soul is different from the material body. Does he acquire the body accidentally or by some cause? Will you kindly explain this? Right? So he wanted to know that how basically the relationship between body and soul, that he wanted to understand. And very interesting, the way he addresses this question, that how this deha arambha asya, so how this soul, if I may put it in a way that we popularly understand, how does the soul enter into the body, right? That is the question. And amazing how he what kind of an answer Sukadeva Goswami gives. Sukadeva Goswami, he immediately dismisses this whole conception. He says soul never enters the body. In fact, soul and body have no relationship. And this is a very powerful philosophical concept, a very important concept, and often misunderstood concept. So let's see the answer that Sukadeva Goswami he gives. He says, Atma mayam rite rajan parasya anubhavatmanaha na ghate artha sambandha swapna drashtur ivanjasa. So Atma mayam rite rajan, actually it is by the Maya Shakti of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, O King Rajan, that Parasya, the Para, the transcendental soul, Anubhava Atmanaha, of whose nature is like pure consciousness, Na Ghateta, never it can happen, Sambandha, a relationship with the material body, right? In the context of the previous question, he says, so this relationship is just like Swapna Drashtur Iva Anjasa. So the translation says, O King, unless one is influenced by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no meaning to the relationship of the pure soul in pure consciousness with the material body. That relationship is just like a dreamer seeing his own body working. This is a very powerful statement and a very powerful analogy that, so let's try to first break this down. That what is he saying? That first of all, the relationship, seemingly there's a relationship between the body and the soul, but that relationship is caused by the Maya Shakti of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what exactly does this do? Oftentimes we think that the soul is in the body, the soul is in the material world, right? These are the notions that we identify it with. So to understand that, very interesting, the choice of words that Sukadeva Goswami uses, Bhagavatam uses, every word has to be properly understood here. He says that Anubhava Atmanha, the nature of soul is Anubhava, experience, consciousness. So it is the consciousness of the soul that identifies with the body. It is not that the soul is in the body or soul has entered in. We use these terms many times. The soul is inside the body, the soul has entered in the material world. We use these kind of notions, right? But look at the choice of word that he uses. And to make this even more understandable, he gives an analogy of a dreamer seeing one's own body working. Now let's try to understand this concept of a dream. So what exactly is a dream? In a dream, you are lying down in your bed, but you are experiencing another kind of reality. In fact, in the Vedic, in the Mundaka Upanishad, it described that how our consciousness goes through these 4 states: Jagruta, wakeful state, in which we all are operating in this world. Then there is Swapna, that is the state of our conventional sleep. Right, that's the state when we dream in the night time. Right, and there is Shushupti, a state where you are neither dreaming nor are you awake. It's a kind of a very deep state. It's almost like a meditative state. Like when you go into meditation, a very, very deep, absorbed meditation, you are not sleeping, nor are you awake to what's happening around you. You completely withdraw your senses inwards. You are completely disconnected from the outside world. But at the same time, you are not gone into your sleep world. You are somewhere in between state. Maybe the closest semblance you have to you can say of this kind of a state is that state of stupor, when you just wake up. You are not dreaming, but still you are not fully aware of what's happening. You are in this kind of a zone in between, right? That's the closest we can understand. And there is the deep, the spiritual state, the Turiya state, right? So these are 4 different states of consciousness. Many times we think that sleep means consciousness is 0. It's not like that. We are still aware, the consciousness is still functioning in that, but it's a different state of operation. So when you are dreaming, externally you are disconnected from the outside world, but internally you are going through very vivid experiences. In fact, when you are dreaming, the experience feels so real. In fact, there's a very nice story that comes in one of our Vedic literature about this King Janaka. One day he has a dream. He has a dream that his head got cut off, and he saw his own head being cut off in the dream. And suddenly he wakes up from this nightmare, and he immediately calls all his ministers and asks them, hey, was that reality? And now that I died and I'm stuck in this kind of a limbo where I think I'm still the king and you are all still my ministers, right? Is that real? Or was that a dream where I died and actually and I woke up to reality? How do I know what is real? Because when you are dreaming, that dream state feels just as real as you are feeling right now. And if you extend that, sometimes you may say, oh, come on, Prabhuji, what are you saying? Sleep is sleep, dream is dream, it ends. Well, but you look at it that way from the soul's point of view, right now, this whole world, the experience that we're going through is like a big material dream, right? So that analogy of the dream is very relevant in a sense. It is pointing to a different state of consciousness. It is not spiritual state of consciousness, but right now the soul is stuck in a material state of consciousness. And while in that state, it identifies with all the pleasures and pains and all the experiences that it goes through. The anubhava atmana, because the nature of self is anubhava, experience, and it goes through the different experiences. There's a very interesting lecture of Srila Prabhupada on this particular verse. Prabhupada gave this in 1972 in Tokyo, and I'd like to read out very nice. It's actually a very, very short lecture. The entire transcription is roughly around 1.5 pages, but very interesting. I had to read out some interesting points in this. So Prabhupada begins the lecture by saying, many people inquire, how did the living entity who was with Krishna fall into the material world? That question is answered here. The fallen living entity's condition is due to the influence of Lord's material energy. Actually, he has not fallen. An example is given here. A moon appears to be moving when clouds are passing in front of it. Actually, the moon is not moving, right? It's just a relative motion. Sometimes the sky, when you'll see clouds are moving, in the big vast stillness of the sky, it looks like the moon is moving. But, so it is the external setting, the relative setting with the clouds that makes the moon as if it's moving. Similarly, the living entity, because he's a spiritual spark of the Supreme, has not fallen. But he's thinking, I'm fallen, I'm material, I'm the body. The body has no connection with the soul. Understand, this has to be taken with little proper understanding. It is not that they are completely disconnected, but just like how in a dream we have a connection with our dream body, right? But though it is not a direct connection, it's an identification. It's a connection coming about through identification. It is not a real, it is not like right now my finger is connected to my hand. That's a direct connection, right? Excuse me. So, but this connection that we have with our dream body is a kind of an identification that we go through. So that is a kind of connection, but not a direct connection. That's why Prabhupada is saying there is no connection with the soul, right? We can experience this. The body is changing and dying, but I am the same. The idea that we have a connection with the body is due to the influence of the illusory energy of Krishna. That illusory energy develops when we forget Krishna, right? So, or in other words, our misidentification with the body is synonymous with our forgetfulness of Krishna. That is the point here. And Prabhupada gives another example that sometimes when you play a part in a drama, you feel, I am a king. But if you think you are so and so, you cannot play the role of a king so nicely. The feelings must be there. If you are playing the part of the king, you must believe you are the king and have his courage. You have to forget you are so and so, right? So if you think, if I think I am Nimai Lila, I cannot function as a king, right? I have to forget my real identity to properly play the role of a king, right? So because we wanted to play that part of Krishna, the supreme enjoyer, Krishna is giving us this chance. Yes, feel me. Get that feeling. I am the master, I am the king, I am Krishna, I am God. So Krishna creates his Maya Shakti to give that false notion, a false experience, anubhava, to the soul, right? So Prabhupada in this purport also gives this example that sometimes, when a child is crying for the moon, the mother can't go get the moon and give it to the child. So what the mother does, she gives a mirror and shows, look, the moon is in your hand now. The reflection of the moon is in the hand and the child becomes happy. So this is a reflected reality, that the material reality is a reflected reality that we falsely identify with, right? And then Prabhupada he also writes that sometimes in a dream, a man cries out, oh, there is tiger, oh tiger, save me. And a man observing may say, where is the tiger? So sleeping person is shouting, oh tiger, 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 but there is no tiger, right? So there cannot be a meaning of a relationship of the soul and the body except that it is like a dreaming man creating an imaginary situation like that. So when someone asks, when did we come in contact with the material nature? The answer is that we have not come in contact. By the influence of external energy, we think we are in contact. Actually, we are not fallen. We cannot be fallen. We have simply created a situation in which we think we are fallen. But actually, Krishna has given that situation. Because we wanted to imitate him, Krishna has given us an opportunity. All right, you want to imitate me? You want to be an imitation king on the stage? So feel like this, play like this, do like this. People will applaud. Oh, what a very nice king. So like that. So that's the point. So our contact with matter is like a dream. We are not fallen. Therefore, at any moment, we can revive our Krishna consciousness. We become liberated as soon as we simply understand I have nothing to do with matter. I am simply Krishna's eternal servant. Sometimes when a fearful dream becomes intolerable, we break the dream. Similarly, we can break the material connection at any moment as soon as we wake up to Krishna consciousness. Oh, Krishna is my eternal master. I am his servant. That's all. That is the way. That's it. Very short, sweet lecture. 1972 in Tokyo. April 1972 lecture. 2.9.1. If somebody is interested, you can read this lecture. So, very, very powerful statement that Bhagavatam is giving. In fact, many times, even in the broader Vedic philosophy as well, this concept is not very properly understood. Many times we think, because the moment you think, let's understand what is, I mean, it's like tomatoes, it's just this kind of same thing, but different perspective, right? Why is Bhagavatam hammering this point? Why is Prabhupada hammering this point, right? The moment you say the soul is in matter, somewhere the soulness of the soul is being lost, which means you have permanently disconnected the soul from Krishna. Or in other words, the soul has lost its capacity to love and be loved by Krishna. And this is where, if you see, in the Abrahamic traditions, the concept of original sin is centered around this. Somewhere, someone ate the forbidden apple and now you are suffering because of that. You are bearing the burden of sin somebody else did. Does it even make sense? Right? And now I am forever disconnected. I am, in flesh, in karna, right? I'm in flesh, right? So, which means I have zero potential to love God. Only somebody else outside of me, other than me, has to give me the potential to love God, right? But the Vedic philosophy, it says you are not a born sinner, but the potential to love and be loved is there always within you. That is you. Ananda is there within you. Prema is there within you. It says that you have covered it with Maya, with avidya, with ignorance. So the eternal connection of the living entity with the Supreme Lord is never lost. And that is a point that Bhagavatam is trying to convey by saying that the relationship of the soul with body is just like a dreamer dreaming a dream, seeing their own body in the dream, right? And as a consequence, what happens? The dream gets very richer. Look at the power of Maya. Maya is not that boring dream where same tape recorder it runs every time, or the same khichdi you have to eat every day. It creates a variety of forms. Bahurupa iva bhati mayaya bahurupaya. Bahurupa means many forms, multi-forms. The illusory living entity appears in so many forms offered by Maya Shakti, external energy of the Lord, while enjoying Ramamano, enjoying Ramayati, enjoying these guna, the material modes. Mama aham iti manyate. It thinks in terms of mama, aham, me and mine. Right? So you see, so what this Maya Shakti does, it shifts our center of consciousness from Krishna to ourselves, the ego. So the first layer, that material layer that influences, I'm using the word influences, right? The soul is the false ego, and that false ego is what? So basically, so in answer to Parikshit's question, basically is dismissing the whole concept that the soul is never in the body. The soul is just identifying with, it's like imagine you are watching a movie, and suddenly you're identifying with one of the characters in the movie, and that character is hit, and the character is bleeding, and you start crying, right? Are you in the movie, right? But your consciousness is so absorbed, you are so much involved in that movie, that you start identifying with that character and think you are that character, and you go through the ups and downs of that character, right? So this is what literally we are going through. That so next time you stand in front of a mirror, don't think that is you. That is just a character you are watching in the movie and you are so strongly identifying with. You are not that person in the mirror, right? So and this, of course, this is not a theoretical concept. The problem is this is not an ordinary movie. The director of this movie, Maya Devi, she's so good. She bewilders us into thinking we are that character. So we cannot break out of that character so easily. We cannot break that connection so easily, right? So that so these first two verses, he explains that how, and then what happens as soon as the living entity becomes situated in his constitutional glory. So the solution, first two verses are talking about the problem. How? Because the Maya Shakti of the Lord, external energy of the Lord, the living entity is identifying with this material body. But as soon as the living entity becomes situated in his constitutional glory and begins to enjoy the transcendence beyond time and material energy, he at once gives up this conception of life, I and mine, and thus becomes fully manifested as the pure self. So that's it. This is what all that it takes. You need to just become reinstated in your original position. So this, the whole spiritual life is about that. The whole spiritual journey is about that. That is why self-realization and God realization, they cannot be separated. You cannot be self-realized without realizing God. And you cannot say, I've realized God without realizing the self. These are two sides of the same coin. Right? That is why the word that is used is Atma Tattva. Self-realization means, Atma Tattva means both. Knowing yourself and knowing God. That is why the next verse he says, Atma Tattva Vishuddhartham Yat Aha Bhagavan Ritam Brahmane Darshayam Rupam Avyalika Vritadarat. So now he is giving example of a case study of a person who transcended that notion of Maya and realized the self. And who is that? Brahmaji himself. And very beautiful the way Sukadeva Goswami is speaking. So subtly now he is addressing the second question that Parikshit asked in the previous chapter. If you remember, first he asked about the relationship of the soul with the body. Next he asked that, oh, if the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whose abdomen the lotus stem sprouted, possesses a gigantic body, according to his own caliber and measure, what is the difference between body of the Lord and ordinary living entities? Basically, if you remember, we discussed this last time, that how I have a particular desire and accordingly I get a body to fulfill that desire. Ant has a particular desire, it gets a tiny body. So Supreme Lord has a gigantic body, perhaps he has a gigantic desire. So his body, my body, both of us are following, seems like it's almost like a law of karma, right? A kind of we discussed this and it's like an anthropomorphic thought process. So that to explain how the Lord's body is transcendental, we need to understand the Lord's abode. Because the Lord, where does his Sachidananda Rupa, where does it exist? It exists in the spiritual abode. So now, Sukadeva Goswami is going to reveal a very, very esoteric concept. How Brahma took darshan of the Lord in Vaikuntha. How did Brahmaji go to Vaikuntha? Because Brahmaji is in this material world. How do you go to spiritual world? Did he take some flying vimana, some airplane, some spacecraft? How did he go there? What is a means to go there? Right? So very, very beautiful. This section is now going to reveal this and how he did that also. So text number 4, translation says, O king, being very much pleased with Lord Brahma because of his non-deceptive penance in Bhakti Yoga, the Lord presented his eternal and transcendental form before Brahma, and that is the objective goal for purifying the conditioned soul. So the word his non-deceptive penance in Bhakti Yoga is an elaboration Prabhupada writes in a translation. Actually, if you see the word-to-word meaning, it says avyalika. Avyalika means without any deception, non-deceptive. Vrita. Vrita means his vow, his the penance that he took up. So it just says non-deceptive penance. So why is Prabhupada adding this term non-deceptive penance in Bhakti Yoga? So wait till we see what happens in the story of Brahma, and then you'll understand. So Prabhupada is kind of reading between the lines and explaining things in advance so that we don't get confused. So he says, what happened to Brahma? So Lord Brahma, the first spiritual master, could not trace out the source of his lotus seed. And while thinking of creating the material world, he could not understand the proper direction for such creative work. So Brahmaji, can you imagine Brahmaji's plight? Like suddenly, he just discovered himself. Here I am seated on a gigantic lotus. Nobody else was there around him. No single living entity. Forget about living entity. Even space as we understand did not exist. Earth, water, fire, air, ether as we understand did not exist. He just found himself in some kind of an abstract, I don't know, just to give you a metaphor, is not exact understanding. Imagine you discover yourself in the middle of a black hole, right? Where space, time, none of these things, they function the way we understand in this real world, right? And in that state, Brahmaji, he was completely, utterly confused. But he knew he had to create, but how? While thus engaged in thinking in the water, Brahmaji heard twice from nearby two syllables joined together. What are the two syllables? The 16th and the 21st of the Sparsha alphabets. So in the Sanskritam consonants, right, starting from Ka. So the first 25 consonants are called as the Sparsha consonant because the tongue is touching your mouth somewhere. Unlike, for example, sounds like ya, ra, la, va. There, the tongue is not so much. Even without the tongue, you can produce this sound. But from ka, cha, ta, ta, pa series. So we speak from ka to ma. These 25 letters are called as sparshal. So in that, the 21st, the 16th is ta, and the 21st is pa. So he heard these two sounds, ta, pa. Now understand, at this point, languages were not introduced. And this shows the power of what Sanskritam is. Please understand, Sanskritam is not a language. It's a codified form of energy exchange that is natural in the creation. Every Sanskritam word carries the energy, because many times the word and what it describes are two different things. Today, for example, when I'm saying the word, for example, water. Water is just water. It's a mnemonic. It's a code that we gave to some liquid that we drink to pacify our thirst, right? But the Sanskritam word jala, right, or apaha, it carries that energy which is represented by that form of material energy called as water. So to understand this, so when Brahmaji heard these two syllables tapa, tapa means in Sanskrit means austerity, penance. That energy of penance is what that was communicated to him, and immediately Brahmaji understood that. And so, very interesting, Bhagavatam says that Nishkinchanam, Nishkinchanas means the people in the renounced order. So these two letters, ta, pa, when they are combined, they become the wealth of the renounced order of life. Or basically tapasya, austerity, penance, living a life of purpose. That is what renunciation means. Renunciation does not mean just renouncing things, but living a very deep, committed, purposeful life. So that is what he heard. And when he heard that sound, he tried to find the speaker, searching on all sides. Where is the sound coming from? Right? But when he was unable to find anyone beside himself, he thought it wise to sit down on the lotus seat firmly and give his attention to the execution of penance as he was instructed. Very powerful. In fact, Prabhupada writes a very, very nice purport here, that hearing of the two syllables Tapa was like Brahma's initiation. Brahmaji got initiated, he got his Diksha, because the time of Diksha, the Guru gives a mantra, an instruction to chant the mantra. So Krishna, when he gave this two syllables Tapa, to the Tapa, elsewhere in the Vedic literature it is described also that he heard the Omkara, he heard the Gayatri mantra. There are different versions of this episode, right? But the point here is that how Brahmaji, Tene Brahma Hridayadi Kavaya, Bhagavatam himself, it describes right in the beginning, that Brahmaji got initiated by Lord Krishna himself. And though he tried finding the source of the sound, in Brahmaji did not find, he did not think, okay, there's nobody around, so I should not take this instruction seriously. In fact, the Prabhupada writes that this is the seriousness of a disciple, that after being initiated by the proper spiritual master, one should engage oneself in the discharge of tapasya, in the execution of devotional service. Or in other words, following the instruction of the spiritual master is the only duty of the disciple. Disciple means discipline. The word disciple comes from discipline, right? So, or shishya, one who accepts shikshana, the instructions and the discipline, is a shishya. So, Brahmaji, he immediately put himself to the task of executing the order of his spiritual master, who is the Supreme Lord himself. Lord Brahma underwent penances for 1000 years by the calculation of the Devatas, not the earthly years, but the Divya Yugas. Then he heard this transcendental vibration from the sky. He accepted it as divine. Thus, he controlled his mind and senses, and the penances he executed were a great lesson for the living entities. That is known as the greatest of the ascetics. So, after Prabhupada gives a number also, 6 times, 30 times, 12 times, 1000 of human years. That's the amount of time Brahmaji did his meditation. Right? And then he heard a transcendental vibration from the sky. And this is the power of understand. All these Vedic mantras, they are not just ordinary syllables. They are a codified version of a higher dimensional truth, a higher dimensional reality. When you chant these mantras, what you're doing basically is trying to think of a mantra to be like a key, and your consciousness is that lock. And when you use the key to unlock your consciousness, you suddenly open the doors to a dimension as governed by the respective key that you are using. So each mantra opens up a different dimension of reality. That is why you have to be careful as to what kind of mantras you are exposing yourself to. Right? So even mantras are also different types. There are some mantras that can, like for example, there are certain mantras that have an energy of lot of austerity, renunciation, right? Lot of a word I want to use here is they have a lot of heat in them, right? And such mantras, especially the liberation-seeking mantras, the scriptures also give certain mantras that can potentially award liberation. Those mantras can kind of shift the energy balance within you by creating a lot of intense heat. What do I mean by heat? A kind of a surge in you, which is almost very masculine in nature. And that sometimes if a practitioner is not capable of handling it, and many times most people just do their own freestyle, eeny, meeny, miny, they pick up some mantras in their own way. So that can sometimes reflect back and become a little counterproductive, right? So therefore, the mantras, each of the mantras have, corresponding shaktis, corresponding deities connected to it, right? So one has to understand the energy of a mantra, the which is the deity that this mantra is trying to address, what kind of energy we're trying to attract to that mantra, right? So this actually helps in accordingly. That's why traditionally, in fact, not traditionally, this is how it is supposed to be done, but unfortunately we don't follow this rule today. A mantra only has to be received from a spiritual master. You can't just Google for a mantra or read randomly in some books. That's why many mantras were never even put out in open. Today many mantras can be found online, right? But a mantra has to be received from a spiritual master. Basically what it means is there is a particular mood associated with every mantra, and that mood is what that guides your consciousness to access the potency of the mantra. Otherwise you'll not be able to handle that, and that is what that kind of protects. So that's why we in our YTTC also we discussed how the concept of parampara is not just a transfer of knowledge, but the mood and values that channelize that knowledge into your consciousness. That's what is the speciality of a tradition. So that is why even to chant a mantra, to fully utilize a mantra for your spiritual advancement, you need to get it from a spiritual master who also imparts you the mood of that particular tradition, right? So when Brahmaji, when he was able to access this mantra, right, look what happened. The personality of Godhead, thus being very much satisfied with the penance of Lord Brahma, was pleased to manifest his personal abode. See, so because this mantra came directly from the Lord of Vaikuntha, right? The deity behind this mantra is Lord Narayan himself. And so the spiritual abode got revealed to Brahma, right? Some of you may be wondering, oh, this sounds very similar to Brahma Samhita. If you read Brahma Samhita, but there Brahma Samhita describes he saw Goloka, right? Very similar. So understand that every cycle of creation, the same story does not repeat. So in a particular cycle of creation, Brahmaji, he accessed the Vaikuntha Loka. In another cycle of creation, the divine sound that Bhagavatam said earlier when Brahmaji did tapasya, it is said the divine sound is the sound of the Kama Gayatri mantra. And when the Kama Gayatri was heard, that Kama Gayatri is a sonic encoding of Goloka. What every syllable of that Kama Gayatri represents, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj explains beautifully in that Brahma Samhita book. It represents the entire description of Goloka, how it has this kind of a hexagonal structure, and how the whirl of that hexagonal structure it's like a star structure. It's not hexagonal, but like a star structure which has its different corners, and each corner are the different gopis of Vrindavan. There's Radha Krishna in the middle. So like there is a beautiful description that there is. So Brahmaji was able to access that entire Goloka, got revealed, and those famous Brahma Samhita prayers he offers to Lord Krishna. So suddenly Brahmaji in this pastime, he was able to access the spiritual abode. And there's a beautiful description of the spiritual abode. Understand, this is something that only is private to those advanced souls who have witnessed it. Because even the ordinary path of the Vedas, the karma, jnana, dhyana, can at best give you moksha and you'll be able to experience Brahman. But when you go beyond Brahman realization, is this Vaikuntha Loka, Goloka, and all these spiritual abodes are the personal form of the Lord will be revealed. Because Parikshit had a question about the personal form of the Lord. You said that Lord has this big gigantic Virata Rupa, is a form of the Lord also like us, right? So in that connection, he's describing the form of the Lord as Brahmaji saw in the spiritual abode. So that is why this whole narration is going on. In that personal abode of the Lord, there is no tamas and rajas, nor even there is the mixed sattva. In this material world, there is no pure sattva. There is mishra sattva, mixed with either rajas or tamas. But there you have shuddha sattva. And there is no predominance of the influence of time. Because what is time doing? Time is creating and destroying. Creation, destruction. Right? Rajas, tamas, creation, destruction. But there is only an eternal present. So there's no question of creation and destruction as we understand in this world. And what to speak of illusionism? There's no Maya also. It cannot enter that region. Without discrimination, without both, very interesting, he says, both the Suras and Asuras are worshipping the Lord. You wonder, what are Asuras doing there? Right? Understand, for the sake of the Lord's pastimes, sometimes Asuras also exist there. Right? Like, there's a beautiful description by Sanatan Goswami in a book called Bhagavad Bhagavatamrita. So in that, there's a description that, Akrura is coming from Kamsa's abode to take Krishna away from Vrindavan. But the pastime is always in Vrindavan, but because, you to create that kind of a feeling of separation from Krishna, there is a character named Kamsa somewhere. And that Kamsa sends Akrura to take Krishna out of Vrindavan. And again, next day, the whole pastime repeats. Right? So the Asuras are also aiding the pastimes of the Lord. So don't think these Asuras are like what we think of in this world. And beautiful description of the people in the Vaikuntha planets. How they have glowing sky bluish complexion. Their eyes resemble the lotus flower. Their dress is of yellowish color. And their bodily features are very attractive. They are just the age of growing youth. Then they have 4 hands and they are all nicely decorated with pearl necklaces. Money. Actually, money can also mean jewels. Prabhupada writes here pearls. With ornamental medallions, and they all appear to be effulgent. Some of them are effulgent, like corals and diamonds in complexion. We can only imagine. I mean, they are like this because corals and diamonds are very effulgent. But they are not just light beings. Light being not heavy light, but beings composed of light, but not formless light. They have beautiful forms, beautiful eyes, beautiful complexion, and having garlands on their heads. It's like there's a beautiful effulgence surrounding them. And then the Vaikuntha planets are also surrounded by various Vimanas. Vimanas are these kind of like airplanes, flying objects, all glowing and brilliantly situated. These airplanes belong to the great Mahatmas or the devotees of the Lord. The ladies are as beautiful as lightning because of their celestial complexion. And all these combined together. Remember, the men were described to be of sky bluish complexion, and the women are described to be of lightning complexion. So sky and lightning together, it appears as if the sky is decorated with both clouds and lightning. That is how beautiful the entire Vaikuntha planet was looking. And Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune in her transcendental form, is engaged in loving service of the Lord's lotus feet. Being moved by the black bees, followers of spring, she is only engaged in variegated pleasure, like that. And she's singing the glories of the Lord. And Lord Brahma, he saw all the Vaikuntha planets. And he saw all the devotees of the Lord. He saw Lakshmi Devi. He saw how he saw the Supreme Lord himself. He saw the main servitors of the Lord, Nanda, Sunanda, Prabala, Arhana. These are all the different associates of the Lord in Vaikuntha. Then the Lord seen leaning favorably towards his servitors. His very sight, intoxicating, attractive, appears to be very much satisfied. He had a smiling face decorated with an enchanting reddish hue. He was dressed in yellow robes and wore earrings and helmet on his head. He has 4 hands, and his chest was marked with the lines of the goddess of fortune. It's called a Srivatsa. So while Sometimes some living entities in Vaikuntha also have 4 hands and they look like the Lord because they got this Sarupya Mukti, or a liberation looking with a similar form of the Lord. But the Lord, he is specially bedecked with uh, the Kaustubha mani, and he is also has this golden streak on his chest representing the Lakshmi Devi, as known as Srivatsa mark on his. And now the Lord is also never alone. He's surrounded by his different energies like the 4, the 16, the 5, the 6. You wonder what 4, 6, what numbers are these, right? So again, acharyas give different explanations about these different energies. So some explain that the 4 represents the 4 principles of Prakriti: the Prakriti, Purusha, Mahat Tattva, and ego. You may be wondering, oh, are these not material energies? What are they doing in Vaikuntha? Because ego, Mahat Tattva, this is material energy. So understand they are in an inactive state there. And the 16 represent the 5 elements and the sense organs and the mind. And the 5 represent the 5 tanmatras, the touch, sight, smell, all of these. And 6, basically the 6 natural opulence of the Lord, wealth, beauty, fame, renunciation, all of these, like that. And there are also some other insignificant energies like the 8 famous siddhis, ashta siddhis, etc. So understand, all these energies were personified personalities. These are not just some, like some red light, blue light, all floating around the Lord. These are all personalities standing around the Lord, worshipping the Lord and praying to him, right? Even the energies of the Lord are personalities. Lord Brahma, thus seeing the personality of God in his fullness, was overwhelmed with joy within his heart. And thus in full transcendental love and ecstasy, his eyes filled with tears. Thus he bowed down before the Lord. Understand, Brahma, where was he? Sitting on the lotus. No. Brahmaji's body, material body, was sitting on the lotus. In his consciousness, in his soul body, he entered into Vaikuntha. His consciousness is now in Vaikuntha. In fact, that is where he really is. The material body may be in this world, sitting on that lotus, right? And then after seeing Brahma present before him, the Lord accepted him as worthy to create living beings, right? And very interesting, it says that he does kara sparshana. Kara means hand, sparshana actually means touching. Prabhupada translated it as Brahmaji, the Lord was very happy and he shook hands with Brahma. So the first transcendental handshake happened between Brahmaji and Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayan. Of course, this is not handshake, but this is like sometimes when you're very affectionate, you hold the hands of your beloved like that. Today, modern day handshake, it originated in a very tamasic way, where people, if you are hiding some weapon in your hand, you want to make sure, so, look, I don't have any weapons in my hand. Here, take my hand and check it. So the modern day handshake came out of rivalry, but this is the original transcendental handshake. And then the Lord says something very beautiful. He says, "Oh Brahma, you are impregnated with the knowledge of the Vedas. I am very much pleased by your penance." And he says, "I am not ordinarily impressed by these pseudo mystics." In fact, he says that actually the greatest benediction that anybody can get is actually seeing me in my abode, and you already got that. And very powerful statement, he says that you may know from me that it was I who ordered you. That Tattva sound was created by me. I personally instructed to you. And very powerful statement. Tapome hridayam sakshat atmaham tapaso anagaha. Tapasya, tapa, austerity is my heart and soul, and therefore penance and I are non-different. And Lord says, I created this whole cosmos with penance. I maintain it with that energy, and I withdraw it with that same energy. Therefore, the potential power is penance only. So this is a very, very powerful statement, right? Why is the Lord saying this? That when Lord says that I am penance, I am austerity, I create the world by penance, by tapa, does it mean, is it like a big austerity for the Lord? Is he struggling to, when you hear words like penance and austerity, we think of some kind of a struggle associated with it. But understand, the word tapa, penance, we have to understand the deeper connotation here. In this material world, for any action to be performed, how is an action even originating? How does something culminate into action? It all begins from consciousness. The consciousness, which is basically desire, it goes through something and translates into action, a successful action. So the fruition of a desire into action happens through the medium of tapa. Please understand, even when a thief is stealing, somewhere the thief is doing some penance. Otherwise, the success in the thievery will not happen. Somewhere, something he is sacrificing, right? He is willing to extend himself and sacrifice. The purpose of penance may be corrupted, but the point here is, and this is a very important point, a very deeper philosophical point, something we'll highlight again in our next week's class. But in the action and interactions in this material world, you think of penance to be the technology that translates desire into action. So it is penance that drives it. That is the definition of material world. Therefore, to achieve success in any endeavor, forget about spirituality, even in ordinary day-to-day endeavors, there has to be some element of penance, a deeper committed purpose. Otherwise, no, I mean, ordinary materialistic people who are trying to chase after wealth and fame, even they are sacrificing something. Wealth and fame, they don't come automatically. So every endeavor in this world is happening, the fruition is happening because of the element of penance. Unlike in spiritual world, what translates the desire into action is love. Love translates, and that love is none other than Srimati Radharani herself, the Antaranga Shakti. She is the one who facilitates. Without her touch, without that Hladini Shakti, the Sambit and Sandhini, the facility potency and the knowledge potencies of the spiritual world, they cannot translate into the ultimate pleasure action of in service of Lord Krishna. So while love is that technology that translates consciousness into action, into seva, in the material world, it is tapa. And why? Because the tapa gradually also purifies us. Right? Somewhere, even to become a thief, you need some discipline. Let's give credit to a thief where it is due. Right? Even ordinary materialistic person, you may say, oh, they are materialistic. Their purpose may be materialistic, but somewhere they also did some hardship, some sacrifice. Right? So this is a very, very important principle. And Brahmaji, understand, he used this power of austerity to create this whole world, this whole universe. And then Brahmaji is going to ask a very, very powerful question. And we are going to see part 2 of this chapter. And the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam is going to come up in that section. So we'll discuss that next week. So let's quickly take up any questions. So there are already a couple of questions in the chat box. We'll read them. So there's a question that is my understanding correct that the soul exits or leaves the body of the successful Ashtanga yogi through the cerebral hole at the top of the head? How do I understand this with today's discussion that the soul is not connected to the material body? So it is the pranic channels, it is a prana that exists, not the soul. Think of it this way, that okay, where is the book? Okay, imagine I have a board, and I have a, right now, this is, look, this is the material world, this is the spiritual world, and there's a board, right? And I have a magnet placed here on this side of the board. From here you cannot see the magnet, but the field of the magnet is what you will see on the other side, and that field is prominent at these hotspots called as chakras. Think of those as the strong magnetic zone hotspots, right? Those are called chakras. There are unlimited lot of chakras in the body, but the 6 prominent ones we know. So when the magnet is completely disconnecting itself from the material body, in that process, on this side, the magnet is again not directly, influencing. There is, think of some magnetic field on this side, and think of the magnetic field flowing through certain channels called as these nadis. So when that happens, that disruption of the pranic channels and the disconnection of the pranic channels is what that causes the Brahmarandra to burst open. Just like how at the time of death also, please understand, the channels open up. That is why sometimes people, they open their mouth when they die, or sometimes people, they pass stool and urine, right? So the soul has, so it's a kind of a disruption that happens in the pranic channel. That is what is being described. But so the this is a symptom, this is an effect. The cause is the soul is now disconnected. Therefore, it is said, oh, now Brahmarandra has burst open. Yes, the soul has definitely been liberated. That's the understanding here. There's another question that sometimes in mantras are chanted in yoga before yoga nidra. Is that bad? I mean, can it have certain repercussions? So, see, like I said, mantras, it's just like, will you eat any kind of food? Will you do any kind of workout? We are so careful about the food we eat and the workout that we do, the kind of asanas that we do, because your body may not be ready for a particular kind of asana. You need to slowly develop the flexibility before you move on to advanced asanas, right? Think of it that way, that even your consciousness also needs to be prepared to handle kind of this, what kind of mantras you are exposing yourself to, and that training is what the guru gives you, the blessing, the empowerment, what that guru gives. So that's why I said there are different kinds of mantras. There are some generic mantras. There are some mantras with specific potencies. So one has to accordingly understand. For example, the Shanti mantras, are the most commonly used mantras. They are, foolproof. They are like fail-safe mantras. You cannot go wrong with it, right? So like that. So and usually every mantra is associated with a particular deity, right? These are the very important aspects of mantra. So what is the energy of the deity, we understand, right? For example, to understand, very simple. That's why our acharyas have made things so easy. With every deity, you'll see every personality, there's a particular, the pastime that the deities have done reveal their energy and their personality, right? Like, for example, you don't want to mess around with Shiva mantras, because if you mess around with Shiva, he'll open his third eye, right? So when you are chanting, for example, Mahamrityunjaya mantra, you have to be prepared. Very, very intense heat is going to come out, right? So like that. So that's why different mantras have different potencies. So it is not that, again, the whole idea of mantra is high, low. This is a very mundane understanding. The best mantra is what your guru has given you, period. Right? So therefore one has to understand that accordingly, that what is the deity that you're addressing. And sometimes even, for example, Shakti mantras also, Devi also has different forms. Devi has a very, very ferocious form as Chandi, as Kali. Devi also has a very gentle form as Bala Tripura Sundari. So she has, she's like in a very small girl. So that likewise, different traditions also have, Shakti traditions also have, their different understandings of how they approach the Devi. So that's why you have to understand what is the energetic form that you're trying to associate with that mantra, and you'll accordingly get the effect. So, do you need to receive a mantra, ready to receive a mantra in order to be effective? How do you know which mantra do you need? Right. So it's not that, okay, I like this mantra, let me go to this guru. Rather, see, understand, ultimately, Paramatma, Krishna's Paramatma, he's the one who liberates. He's the one who's the Chaitya Guru. He's the one who guides you, liberates you. Right? So, the thing that as a seeker that you need to do is continue your seeking. And Krishna will orchestrate your life in such a way that you will go in that path. So, and you will find the teacher, and then the teacher will give you the mantra. The guru will give you that mantra. So, rather than don't shop for mantras, rather work on yourself, and Krishna will orchestrate your life in such a way that you will get the teacher and the mantra associated with it. Okay, so let's end our discussion here. So next week we'll resume for text number 25, and the 4 important verses of Bhagavatam, Chatushloki Bhagavatam, are going to come up in that section. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.